Hello, my name is Henry York, and today I've prepared pretty much a summary of an interview with my grandpa for you to present about how culture and money and everything from the 50s is all a lot different than it was now. Um, First of all, culture, times have changed a lot since the 50s. Like fast food, it was around back then, but I mean, uh, it's just the way we eat food and everything has changed. Uh, the way we dress, the way people act. People are a lot more disrespectful and everything. And also, you know, parenting has changed a lot too because if parents didn't raise their children well back then, they just starved or had to get government assistance, which was highly frowned upon back then. So everything has changed a lot since then. Now, I know I didn't interview someone who's a, master, PhD on this subject. Sorry about that, by the way. And but I did get a pretty good first-hand account of what times could be like in that time period. Bobby Joe, of course, was raised on a farm then, and they didn't have much money or anything. His money certainly affected his lifestyle. He didn't wear Nike and Gucci and everything, and also culture at the time, cars and everything affected his lifestyle because it made him passionate about something. In a time where it's kind of hopeless to have passion, he started working on cars and worked in parts houses and everything his whole life. And it also affected the way he raised his kids, but more on that later. He gave a lot of information over the years and in the interview, but it can pretty much be summarized in three categories. How money affected his youth, how 50s culture affected his youth, and how parenting affected his youth. But first of all, money. Fast food was around, but it wasn't widespread. Like what people ate, they had to kill, they had to harvest, and they had to prepare it for themselves. Like if they didn't, they'd just starve or have to go to a bread line or something to get assistance. Also, travel at the time was a whole lot different. People didn't just go on vacations to Florida and everything. Instead, even a trip to Somerset, which is just in the next county over from Wayne County, that was considered a pretty big luxury at the time, and it was considered a whole lot different than Wayne County, especially the rural culture around here. And education as well. Now, while money wasn't really an issue for most people when getting an education, it sort of was because a lot of times students had to drop out of school for a semester or a year to make sure their farm was in like prime condition. So, they had stuff to eat during the winter, and their whole family didn't starve. And then sickness came about a lot because of this, because poverty. They didn't have warm clothing and everything sometimes. And my grandpa got the measles one time when he was younger, and it put him out of school for about a semester, which put him back a whole year. So he got behind a year. So he was 19, 20 when he graduated. Now, 50s culture also affected the youth. Cars were around since the late 1800s, but in the 50s, they got like faster and louder, and this really inspired my grandpa to do something he liked. And so he did a little bit of drag racing and everything back in the day, and he won a lot too. Music also influenced the culture. Pop was really hopeful and upbeat, which wasn't really something that people from the time saw, and I guess it wasn't relatable, but it gave hope. And then there was also country at the time. There were a few other genres, but that pretty much summarizes it. Country is all about these poor people, these Western heroes and everything. It gave a little bit of hope, but pretty much it just gave a good picture of what society was like back then. And people like Marty Robbins and Johnny Cash did a really good job at displaying this. Greaser culture also had a big impact. My grandpa always liked to slick his hair back when he had hair, and he also liked to ride motorcycles. Like one of his first vehicles was a motorcycle, and he liked to ride that thing a lot. But more on parenting. Back in the day, of course, if your work ethic wasn't high, you just starved. There wasn't a second chance. You'd either get whooped by your parents and hope you didn't starve to death, or you'd have to get government assistance, or both even. So that was really embarrassing at the time. And also, parents were a lot stricter, and reverence towards elders was stressed a lot. Like if you didn't respect your elders, it showed you were from a trashy family. So my grandpa really respected people older than him, even when he was in the 70s. But it also affected the way he did his parenting. So he kept a lot of the ethics that he learned growing up, but he made sure not to do as much physical contact and everything, because he didn't seem to be traumatized by it, but I'm sure it had some effect on his well-being and everything. And he raised 2 young women to be good people. And so all this can pretty well be summarized by, the 3 categories. How money affected his youth, how 50s culture affected his youth, and how his parenting affected his youth. And Bobby Joe, he knew a lot because he experienced it all. He's a pretty good source on that. And then it's not indicative of all people's childhoods back then, but it makes a pretty good statement for what youth could be like in the South and a poverty-stricken rural area in the 50s. And nowadays, we take fast food, technology, everything for granted, but back then they didn't have that. And it's important to remember that at any time, any of this could be taken away from us, and we got to stay modest and noble and know how to work hard and do farming and all this.